Fortnite.
This video contains some serious spoilers for Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I know the movie isn't out everywhere just yet, so I want to give a pretty solid heads up about that. If you're going to see the movie, remember to be safe, wear a mask, social distance, and we're still in a global pandemic after all. Also, this video is kind of a mess. My camera was out of focus the whole time. Please don't hate me. So, Venom 2 is pretty f***ing rad. Andy Serkis took the best parts of the first movie, cut out all the fat, and gave us a really enjoyable, really fun time, and I really liked it. The movie is surprisingly a pretty good Spider-Man movie, talking about consequences and responsibility. The relationship between Eddie and the symbiote is gayer than ever, and I love that. I think that's a really fun direction for these movies to be going in. I've always felt like the idea of Venom without Spider-Man is really weird, but they're doing something really fun with this, and I really enjoyed it. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the pacing of the movie. It feels like the third act is like 5 minutes long, and also I hate to say it, but Carnage was kind of the weakest part of the movie. Not to say that he was bad or anything, but he felt just kind of like the same as Riot, you know? I feel like the fun aspects of Carnage they didn't really go with, and that's a little disappointing. If you want to hear my full thoughts on the movie, I talked about it on the newest episode of my podcast, Fanboy Talk. Did somebody say Venom? Did somebody say we're on video Venom? Now? Did somebody say
video?
Did somebody say Venom in Fortnite? So check that out using the link in the description. But today I mostly wanted to talk about that credit scene. You know, that crazy post-credit scene that everybody's talking about. The scene starts with Eddie and Venom watching the soap opera together. They start talking about their pasts and secrets and stuff like that. The sky like explodes in some kind of multiversal fashion type way. Like there's like a little glitch almost. And then the TV changes from the soap opera into J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, talking about Peter Parker and his identity of Spider-Man. And then they show a picture of Tom Holland as Spider-Man on screen with his mask off for, you know, reasons, I guess because nobody would recognize that it's Tom Holland. I don't know. A guy comes out and says, "Hey, what are you doing in my room?" And they play a little joke with that. And then that's basically the end of the credit scene. So there were a few things that are like kind of notable to me in this scene. The first thing being that guy at the end, that is Uncle Ben. The symbiote says he has a past, and to me that can only mean one thing, and that means that he's interacted with Peter before. And there is a chance with that now that we could maybe get like flashbacks or some type of retcon to involve the black suit with Spider-Man and Peter and stuff, and I find that really cool. I think they could be really fun. The next thing that like I see that I think is notable is that the multiversal like shift thing happened, which we assume is the Doctor Strange spell. The TV comes on and Peter's identity is still public. Now, to me, this can mean like a couple different things, because we were led to believe in the No Way Home trailer that the spell that Doctor Strange does, that Peter does, is successful more or less in undoing his identity being public, and it's just the doing of the spell is what leads to the multiversal stuff and the bad things. However, this makes me feel like the spell gets canceled midway through, because in the trailer Peter says that he's worried about Aunt May and Ned and MJ not knowing. This makes me think that the spell is actually going to get canceled, and it's the cancellation of the spell that leads to the problem. It's Peter's fear of being alone with his identity that leads to the actual issues, which if you watch my video on the No Way Home trailer, I was a little bit concerned with what the arc was going to be with Peter, with what the character arc was going to be. I was worried that it was going to lead with him realizing that he needs his identity public. However, with this and with the cancellation of the spell being basically the triggering event for the catastrophic event, that makes me think that that's going to be the thing that he needs to overcome and realize he needs. And I'm far more interested in that. The other possibility with that is that maybe this multiverse thing isn't the Doctor Strange spell. I mean, it looks like the Doctor Strange spell. I mean, it sounds like the Doctor Strange spell. Fuck, it even smells like the Doctor Strange spell. But like, there is a chance that maybe the multiverse stuff and the Peter identity spell undoing stuff like that, maybe they're completely unrelated things and we are just led to believe that they're the same thing. And the characters think that too. Maybe Doctor Strange assumed that it was the spell that led to the multiverse problems, when in reality somebody else is pulling the strings, whether that be Mephisto or Mysterio or Madam Web. I don't know a ton of other like multiversal villains. Kindred. Oh, I hope not Kindred. Which that would be pretty interesting. I don't think they would go about that. I think like that's too complicated of an idea to do in a single movie, and No Way Home is already pretty packed, so I don't think that's going to be the idea, the thing. But that is still like an option, and that could be like a crazy twist, you know? I think that'd be pretty fun. And then the other option, and this is the thing I'm like the least interested in and the least excited about if this is the case, there's a possibility that this is actually the end of No Way Home. I don't think so. Sony wouldn't do that. That would be dumb. But that Sony's also spoiled the movies before in the past, so I don't know. There is a possibility that No Way Home ends with the multiverse stuff getting fixed, and that brings Venom over, and Peter ends with his identity still public. There is a chance. I don't think so. That's a very, like, that's I don't think so. So those were those explanations as to like what the multiversal thing was and the timeline of it and everything. And then obviously the big notable thing is Tom Holland Spider-Man, Venom licking the screen in a gross fashion, but it's kind of cool because I think he's gonna eat him. I like that. I want him to eat Spider-Man. I want him to eat his head. But the way that Venom says that guy implies that he knows Spider-Man. He knows Peter, and that kind of goes with his whole talk about having a past and having secrets and having been with other people before. The thing is, though, we still don't know for sure if this version of Peter is the Peter that Venom knows. Maybe Venom just sees the name Peter Parker and Spider-Man and sees a different face on it, but still has those emotions and still has that hatred. And that would be an interesting way to go about it. I don't know if I would necessarily like that. Because it feels kind of disjointed and it feels kind of like it feels like a lot of the emotion is kind of removed from that. Maybe this Venom's version of Peter was the Andrew Garfield Peter, and that'd be really cool because I've always felt that Tom Hardy and Andrew Garfield would be better. Like, I feel like they kind of gel a little bit better than Tom Holland and Tom Hardy. So we don't fully know which version of Peter this is, but we do know they're setting up something with Venom, something with Tom Holland, and something with Spider-Man No Way Home. We don't know exactly what yet, and so there are a couple options, and there are a couple possibilities that I can think of at least from this, because there's a lot of potential with this credit scene. The first being the kind of obvious one, and it's the idea that Venom would be a member of the Sinister Six in Spider-Man No Way Home. The villains that are going after Peter. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know. I feel like Venom as a Sinister Six member never really interests me. I've always felt like he's best like separate from it. I feel the same way about Green Goblin, where like I don't know if he would team up with him. You know, it's just kind of like weird. Venom just doesn't really fit the Sinister Six vibe and the motto of like a team of villains that just hate Spider-Man so much. Because I feel like Venom's hate for Spider-Man goes above and beyond just general, if that makes sense. Like Scorpion and Venom being on the same team, it's like, are you for real? This dude totally like outshines you in every way. Does that make sense? I don't know. They could go about that. Granted, I think that would be kind of a disservice to the Venom character and to this version of Venom, just to have him be this, 1/6 of the threat in this next movie, and that's why the other option that I can think of would be something like Venom going after Peter as like the lethal protector, as a separate thing, as a separate entity, like basically hunting Peter down, kind of like a Craven type thing actually, but the symbiote basically justifying it as this guy's a murderer. Hey, this guy tried to bomb London or whatever Mysterio tried to do. The other option is maybe Venom's just gonna team up with the Spider-Man. I'm not huge on that. I don't know. That'd be kind of weird. It'd have to give him a good amount of screen time to give him substance, and like there's already a lot going on. In terms of the thing that would satisfy me the most, it really would be Eddie and Venom not being in No Way Home. Leave them out of it for this one, and then bring them in for Venom 3 versus Spider-Man, That would give the filmmakers enough time to really dive deep into the characters and like not just shove a ton of things in there. Because imagine this No Way Home thing. You've got Doc Ock, Green Goblin, potentially Lizard, potentially Scorpion. Oh god, I'm gonna drop my Baja Blast. Potentially Vulture and Electro and like all these things. It's like, that's a lot going on. Plus all the Spider-Men. Plus like the Peter identity stuff, throwing Tom Hardy's Venom into the mix, which is already like a complicated thing, and trying to like half-ass some like connection with this version of Peter, it'd be like a little too much. But knowing Sony, that's probably exactly what they're gonna do, because you know how they go, you know how they be. But basically, to wrap things up and to conclude things a little bit, I think there's a lot of potential with this credit scene, and there's a lot of things they could do with this that like excite me a lot. Normally with a lot of credit scenes that I see for movies, specifically Marvel things, I already know like the slate, I already know what the plan is, I already know what they're doing. So when I see a credit scene, I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing that. Oh, that's just what they're doing. Like there's not really a huge like amount of potential when I see credit scenes anymore. But this, it feels like they go in a ton of different directions, and I really like that. And I think that mostly comes from the fact that Sony doesn't really seem to know what they're doing. To a lot of people, it might be like kind of frustrating because it's like, oh, they don't have a plan. I kind of like that they don't have a plan. It's like I feel like I'm on a roller coaster that is falling apart behind me, and I'm just having a blast. They're not trying to be Marvel. They're not trying to have this crazy consistent timeline. They're just trying to make movies and have Spider-Man in them. It's throwing this huge wrench into this perfectly well-oiled machine of a universe, and the filmmakers just kind of have to go, yeah, that's us. Either way, like this could be really great, or this could be really terrible. And I think that potential leads to a lot of really fun possibilities, and it makes me like excited to think about it. And I think it's a cool opportunity to explore certain things, and in a way just kind of tell people like, hey, stop caring about timelines, stop caring about multiverse stuff and trying to explain things and everything, and just like accept movies for how they are. I kind of hope, I know they're going to, but I kind of hope that they don't like overly explain Tom Hardy Peter stuff. I kind of hope that they just say, yeah, I know that guy, and they just retcon Peter being like, oh no, I know that guy too. Like, who cares? Who cares if the timeline is perfectly consistent? This isn't a TV show. This isn't even comics. Comics aren't even perfectly consistent. Who cares? Obviously, we want some consistency, but we also don't want to limit ourselves because of the consistency. Canon is a means for telling story. Canon is a platform to interact with characters and interact with the world. It is not the story itself. And if the story counteracts the canon, or if the canon doesn't allow an interesting story to happen, then the canon needs to budge a little bit, you know? If that's what Sony's doing, if Sony just is saying like, fuck the canon, we're just gonna make movies, I think that's really cool. I'm not saying that Sony is like this great like indie down-to-earth company or whatever. They're still a multi-conglomerate making movies. But like everybody is now, you know, all these characters are owned by huge properties or huge companies and stuff. When in reality, they should be owned by the creator. They should be owned for the people that made the comics and by the artists. Really, they should be public domain actually, but the being owned by the creators is the next best thing, and I'm fine with that. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. This has kind of been a weird one. The Baja Blast has not kicked in yet, so I'm kind of chill, and I don't really know what I'm doing. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Special thanks to Alto the Sting, Cassidy Bond, Connor Lengyel, Iron Ninja, Jonah, Logan Triplet Films, Lord Corb, Red Dead, Spiderstorm, Sam Wright, and Tyler Goodrich for being spectacular fanboys on my Patreon. This has been TroyBoy17 coming at you live. Trans rights, be responsible, and I'll see you around.